I never wanted another man to replace my husband. I wanted my husband to act like the thought of losing me terrified him. For years, I dressed to attract attention, flirted with men in front of him, and pushed every boundary I could find. Ethan never raised his voice. He simply said that he trusted me, as though trust could replace passion. To me, that was not confidence. It was weakness. So when my best friend suggested auctioning off the place beside me at a nightclub, I thought it was funny and necessary. Once another man won his chair, Ethan would finally stop hiding behind his calm and fight for his wife. But when the first bids came in, he only looked past me toward the crowd and moved his thumb twice around his wedding ring. I took his silence as permission to make the game even crueler. My name is Delaney Cross. I was 33, and I built luxury events for people who paid to feel important. To be fair, Ethan had never cheated or lied. He simply loved me so quietly that sometimes I could not hear it. That was why the nightclub auction seemed funny to me and necessary. If another man won the chair beside me, Ethan would finally stop hiding behind trust and show everyone that his wife mattered. Ethan and I had been together for 9 years and married for 6. In the beginning, his calm made me feel safe. Every Sunday, we chose a diner and wrote future plans on paper coasters with a gold paint marker. One coaster said Montreal. Another described a house with tall windows. A third promised a dog in our bed. Those mornings were real, and so was the night my mother needed emergency surgery. Ethan sat outside her room for 14 hours, charged my phone, and remembered which nurse had promised an update. He showed love through tasks. What he could not do was meet emotion with emotion. When I cried, he brought water. When I became angry, he lowered his voice. When I asked whether he feared losing me, he said fear was not love. My mother had taught me something different. My father left when I was 14, and afterward she said a man fought for what he feared losing. Ethan knew that story. He also told me about his father, who checked his mother's phone and followed her car. Ethan promised never to turn possession into devotion. At first, I admired that. Later, it sounded like an excuse. The first real test happened at a rooftop hotel launch. I wore a black dress with an open back. Ethan arrived late, kissed my cheek, and asked whether the lighting company had fixed the west wall. He did not tell me I looked beautiful until I asked. Noah Bennett, the event photographer, noticed without being asked. He said the dress looked perfect under the terrace lights, then touched my elbow while guiding me toward a better angle. I laughed and let him stand close. I counted to 3 before looking toward Ethan. He was watching from beside the bar. Noah asked whether my husband was protective. I told him Ethan believed in freedom. Noah smiled, and I placed my hand against his jacket while asking about his camera. Across the terrace, Ethan looked past me toward the photographer's assistant. His thumb moved twice around the edge of his wedding ring. I knew that gesture. It meant he had no answer and hoped someone else would interrupt. So I asked Noah to take a photograph with his hand around my waist. The flash went off. Ethan walked over, but instead of telling Noah to move, he asked whether I was enjoying myself. I told him I was trying, although it was difficult with a husband who behaved like a coworker. He said he trusted me to understand the difference between attention and disrespect. I heard a man refusing to fight. I told him trust was a beautiful word for weakness. His mouth tightened, but his voice stayed even. He asked what had changed between us. I said I was giving him a chance to show that he cared. He said care should not require a public trap. That answer annoyed me because it sounded reasonable. On the drive home, I asked whether he had seen Noah touch me. Ethan said yes. I asked whether he understood that Noah wanted me. He said Noah's interest mattered less than my intention. Then he asked what reaction I had wanted. I could have answered honestly. Instead, I told him a real husband would already know. He went silent. I called him a doormat before we reached our building. He did not defend himself. By the time we parked, I had decided the rooftop test had failed for one reason. I had not pushed hard enough. Next time, I would push harder. After the rooftop launch, I told myself I was finished testing Ethan. That lasted 4 days. To be fair, I had given him a chance to react, and he had answered with a lecture about trust. A wife should not have to beg her husband to care whether other men want her. Ethan gave me nothing. The next opportunity came at a hotel development gala in a dining room. I wore a red dress and left my wedding ring beside the bathroom sink. Ethan noticed the empty finger. He asked whether I had forgotten something. I told him I had not decided whether the ring matched the dress. He said the ring was not an accessory. His tone was calm, which made the words feel weak. I put it on because I wanted him to believe the argument was over. The seating plan was mine. I placed Malik Turner beside me and Ethan across the table. Malik was a hotel executive with a direct way of speaking. When I described a difficult client, he said he would have removed the man from the account. Ethan would have offered options. Malik offered certainty. Madison sat 2 chairs away and watched me lean closer to him. Earlier, I had told Malik that Ethan and I had a modern marriage. I never explained what modern meant. That was not exactly a lie. It was room for interpretation. During dinner, Malik asked whether Ethan minded my late events. I answered that Ethan rarely minded anything. Ethan heard me. His eyes moved past my shoulder toward Priya, one of my colleagues, and his thumb circled his wedding ring twice. Priya lowered her eyes. I read his gesture the same way I always did. He wanted someone else to interrupt because he could not handle the moment himself. Malik rested one hand near the back of my chair. He did not touch me, but the distance was small enough for Ethan to see. I waited. Ethan remained seated. Madison whispered that he looked like an employee waiting for permission to leave. I laughed because it fit him. Near dessert, Ethan asked Malik to speak with him by the bar. They were gone for less than 2 minutes. When Malik returned, he moved his chair away from mine. I assumed Ethan had begged him to stop. That thought pleased me. In the parking garage, Ethan named the incident. He said I had described our marriage as modern, left Malik to guess the rules, and then watched him for a reaction. He asked what I had hoped would happen. I told him a confident husband would have crossed the room and made his position clear. Ethan asked what position that was. I said he should have shown Malik that I belonged beside my husband. Ethan said I was his wife, not a seat someone could claim. He added that losing me would hurt, but controlling me would make him like the man who had frightened his mother for years. I heard another excuse. I told him he used his father whenever passion required courage. He turned toward the concrete wall. Then he asked whether I wanted love or fear. I told him I wanted a man who could make me feel wanted without explaining every emotion like a policy. He went quiet, so I called him a coward. Then a doormat. Then a husband who had confused passivity with goodness. He did not defend himself. At home, Ethan's phone lit up with a message from Malik. The preview contained a 23-second video from dinner. It showed me telling Malik that our marriage was modern. I assumed Ethan had asked for proof because he did not trust his memory. The detail did not fit the weak man I had described, but I dismissed it. The next afternoon, Madison said Ethan knew he could not compete with men like Malik. She suggested giving him a rival who would not step back after one private conversation. Then she mentioned Adrian Vega, a nightlife consultant I had known in college. I called the idea harmless. I decided not to tell Ethan. My next test needed a man who understood the game. Adrian entered our circle at Madison's cousin's engagement party beside a lake. Lanterns hung from the trees, and a small band played near the dock. I told Ethan that Adrian was attending because he worked in nightlife and might help with one of my future events. That was true. I did not mention that Madison had invited him because she believed Ethan needed a rival. Adrian arrived in a cream jacket and greeted me with both hands around mine. He said I looked exactly as he remembered, only more successful. Ethan stood beside me and asked how we knew each other. I answered before Adrian could. I said we had been close in college. Close was useful because it sounded intimate without forcing me to explain anything. Adrian looked amused, but he did not correct me. To be fair, Ethan had every chance to ask another question. He simply shook Adrian's hand and moved toward the drinks table. His calm irritated me before the party had even started. I had chosen a fitted green dress. Adrian noticed it. Ethan had only asked whether I needed his jacket after sunset. One man saw a woman. The other saw a weather problem. Madison watched Adrian place a hand at the back of my chair during dinner. She raised her glass toward me, pleased that the plan was working. I looked at Ethan. He was speaking with the bride's father as though nothing unusual was happening. Adrian asked whether my marriage had always been so quiet. I told him Ethan and I had become more like partners than lovers. That was not the same story I had given Malik, but the difference did not matter to me. Malik needed to believe our marriage was modern. Adrian needed to believe there was emotional space beside me. Both ideas came from the same problem. After sunset, Madison brought out cocktail napkins and the gold paint marker Ethan and I once used during our Sunday diner trips. She suggested rating the men at the party. Style, confidence, ambition, charm. The first scores were harmless. The bride's brother received an 8 for charm. Adrian received a 9 for confidence. Noah, who was photographing the party, received an 8 for style. People laughed and argued over the numbers. Then Madison asked me to rate Ethan. The group became quiet. I could have called the game finished. Instead, I uncapped the marker. I gave Ethan a 6 for style because his suit was plain. I gave him a 4 for confidence because he had not reacted to Adrian. For passion, I wrote 3. Madison laughed first. Adrian smiled, but 2 women near the dock stopped talking. Ethan stood beside the drinks table with one hand in his pocket. I added the scores and wrote 4 out of 10 across the napkin. Then I walked over and held it against his chest while Noah's camera faced us. I explained that Ethan was dependable but had no fire. I said loyalty was useful, but loyalty without strength was something people expected from a trained pet. Noah lowered his camera. Madison told him to keep recording because it was only a game. Ethan looked past me toward the event videographer. His thumb moved twice around his wedding ring. I knew what that meant. He wanted someone else to stop me because he could not stop me himself. No one moved. The silence made me feel stronger. Ethan asked whether the score described our marriage or only my mood that night. I told him everyone could already see the answer. He asked whether embarrassing him in public would create the emotion I wanted. I said it might create something, which was more than he had given me lately. His face stayed controlled. Then he walked toward the videographer. He asked her to preserve the full, unedited recording of the rating game and include it with the event files. I heard him mention my name and the original footage. I assumed he wanted to watch it later and study where he had failed. That thought made him seem smaller. Adrian offered me his arm and asked me to dance. I accepted before Ethan returned. On the dance floor, Adrian placed one hand at my waist. I let it remain there while looking over his shoulder. Ethan was speaking with Noah. Noah's expression had become serious, and once he looked toward me before turning away. I believed Ethan was asking him not to flirt with me again. Even that disappointed me. I had wanted a public claim, not another quiet conversation. Later, Madison became less excited. She stopped suggesting new categories and said the mood had become heavier than she expected. I reminded her that pressure was the whole point. She agreed, but her answer came slowly. On the drive home, Ethan asked why I needed strangers to confirm something I refused to ask for directly. I told him I had asked for passion many times. He said I had asked for jealousy, not closeness. He added that I was using humiliation as a shortcut to intimacy. I called that another cold analysis from a man afraid of emotion. The next Sunday, Ethan went to our usual diner alone. When he returned, 3 blank coasters lay on his desk beside the gold marker. I looked at them for several seconds. Then I decided he had left them there to make me feel guilty. I closed the spare room door and called Adrian. If a small rating game had finally disturbed Ethan's calm, the nightclub event would break it completely. Serena came to our apartment 3 days after the engagement party. She was Ethan's older sister, and she normally avoided our arguments because she believed married people should solve their own problems. This time, she carried the napkin with my gold 4 out of 10 score written across it. Noah had given it to her after the party. In daylight, the number looked less like a joke and more like something a cruel teenager might write, but I refused to let Serena control the meaning. To be fair, Ethan had already turned a private marriage problem into a family discussion by speaking to her. Serena placed the napkin on the coffee table and asked why different men had received different descriptions of our relationship. I said Ethan had been collecting sympathy instead of speaking to his wife. Serena corrected me. She said he had not described his feelings or asked anyone to take his side. He had only asked what each man believed I had told him. The wording bothered me because it made his quiet conversations sound organized. I counted the differences. Noah believed Ethan accepted open flirting. Malik believed we had a modern marriage. Adrian believed the marriage was emotionally finished. 3 men. 3 versions. I told Serena that context mattered and that none of those statements was a direct promise. She said that was the problem. Ethan entered the room while we were arguing. He saw the napkin, picked it up, and turned it over. Adrian's score was written on the back. 9 out of 10. Ethan looked at it for several seconds. There was no anger in his face, only a tired sadness that made me uncomfortable. He asked whether I had ever planned to stop testing him. I told him the tests would stop when he finally passed one. Serena looked toward the window. Ethan asked what passing meant. I explained that I needed him to fight for me, claim his place, and show other men that his wife mattered. He said my place beside him had always been mine until I began treating it like a prize he had to win every week. That answer was sharp enough to hurt, so I changed my approach. I sat beside him and softened my voice. I said I understood that public conflict frightened him because of what his father had done to his mother. I suggested turning the nightclub event into a safe game where several men could describe what they offered, and Ethan could finally show his confidence without shouting or threatening anyone. It sounded like compromise. It was really another test, only dressed more carefully. Ethan asked whether the winner had already been chosen. I said no. That was partly true. Madison and I had discussed helping Adrian reach the final round, but we had not officially selected him. Ethan looked past me towards Serena and moved his thumb twice around his ring. I believed he wanted his sister to stop the plan for him. Serena remained silent. After a long pause, Ethan said he would attend. He added that every participant needed to understand the rules and every statement had to remain connected to the person who made it. I heard surrender. The nightclub planning meeting happened the next afternoon in a glass office above the main floor. Lena Park, the operations manager, already knew Ethan's name. She shook his hand before mine and asked whether the guest list was final. I assumed Ethan had called her to complain. Through the office wall, I could see the DJ booth, the stage, and a velvet rope separating the empty VIP area. The room smelled of cleaning spray and sweet fog machine liquid. I explained the auction. 5 men would receive bid cards and compete in categories such as confidence, ambition, strength, lifestyle, and husband material. I would sit in the center while Ethan's chair stood beside me. The winner would take his seat and share the final dance with me. Lena listened without smiling. She gave us 3 rules. Every bidder had to sign his card. Every microphone would remain active. The venue would keep the cards and recordings. I agreed because the rules made my game feel professional. Ethan asked whether each card could have a second sealed side for a private final statement. I turned toward him. He said a real auction needed clear conditions. For several seconds, the room did not fit the story I had told myself. Lena knew him. Ethan was helping too easily. His calm no longer looked like fear. It looked like patience. Then Adrian entered, kissed my cheek, and placed a hand behind my chair. Ethan did nothing. The familiar anger returned, and I closed the uncomfortable thought. He was cooperating because structure made him feel safe. That evening, Serena asked me to cancel the auction. I told her she was afraid Ethan would lose. She said the person losing might not be the person I expected. I called that another attempt to make the game sound dangerous. Ethan slept in the spare room. Light remained beneath the door after midnight. I almost knocked, but his phone vibrated, and I pictured him gathering more witnesses to his weakness. Instead, I sent Madison the final category list. The last category was husband material. By then, the auction was no longer meant to create jealousy. It was meant to prove Ethan had never deserved the chair beside me. The nightclub was full before 11. Blue light moved across the walls, and the bass came through the floor hard enough to shake the glasses in the VIP section. I wore a silver dress because I wanted every camera to find me first. Ethan arrived in black and took the chair marked current husband without making a joke. Adrian wore the gold ribbon Madison had chosen for the man she expected to win. To be fair, the setup looked perfect. 5 bidder chairs faced the crowd. My high-backed seat stood at the center, and Ethan's place waited beside me like something that could be claimed. Madison took the microphone and explained that the auction was only a game. She said strong marriages survived honest competition. People laughed, and I watched Ethan for the reaction I had spent years trying to force from him. His eyes moved past me toward Lena near the control booth. His thumb circled his wedding ring twice. I smiled because I understood him. He needed someone else to stop the night. No one would. Noah entered the first round and offered creativity, attention, and travel. Malik offered stability and direct communication. Grant, a fitness entrepreneur Adrian knew, promised strength and protection. Adrian waited until last. He offered excitement and the certainty that no woman beside him would ever question whether she was wanted. The crowd responded to him immediately. Then Lena called Ethan forward. The music lowered. Ethan stood in front of me and asked whether I wanted him to compete as himself or as the man I had already described to everyone. I told him the room could judge both. He said he would offer the truth. I laughed and explained that truth was his favorite hiding place whenever passion required effort. The first score was appearance. I gave him 6. For money, 7. For strength, 5. For confidence, 3. When Madison reached the category about satisfying a woman, I gave him 2. The laughter was smaller that time. I continued anyway. I said Ethan was dependable but dull, loyal but cold, safe but weak. Then I said the one thing he could not deny. He had stopped reaching for me long before I began reaching for reactions from other men. Every argument became an analysis. Every request for passion became a problem he wanted to manage. When I needed emotion, he withdrew into silence and waited for me to become easier. Ethan did not challenge the accusation. His face tightened, and for a second the game became too quiet. He asked me to leave the stage with him. He said we could go home, end the auction, and speak without witnesses. It was the first real offer he had made all night, but it came too late and too softly. I looked at the crowd and understood that leaving would make me look afraid of my own test. I told him that asking me to hide the truth in private was another act of cowardice. Then I removed my wedding ring. The metal clicked against the small table beside my chair. Even Madison stopped smiling. I announced the final condition. The winner would take Ethan's place beside me, receive the last dance, and prove that I had chosen the wrong husband. Ethan asked whether I understood that some public choices could not be returned to private life. I said that was exactly why the choice mattered. He turned toward Lena and asked her to keep every microphone active and preserve every signed bid card. His voice became quieter. Mine became louder. He said he would handle the result properly. I heard surrender. Madison began the final round, asking each man why he deserved me more than Ethan did. Noah spoke carefully about attention. Malik spoke about honesty. Grant said chemistry mattered. Adrian stood last and said I deserved a man who was not afraid to be seen wanting me. That was the answer I had built the whole night around. I chose him. Madison placed the winner's ribbon over Adrian's shoulder, and he sat in Ethan's chair. I picked up my wedding ring and held it toward him while the crowd waited for Ethan to break. He did not. I searched first for anger, then for pain, and finally for Madison. Her chair was empty. The folder she had carried all evening was gone. I assumed she had left to prepare the final music. Adrian leaned closer, and I announced that the auction had finally produced an honest result. Ethan remained near the stage steps, silent and still. His calm looked smaller than defeat. I believed I had forced him to accept what everyone else could already see. I believed his place beside me had finally gone to a stronger man. I believed I had won. Lena asked whether anyone wanted to make a final bid. The room stayed quiet. Then Ethan stood. He looked past my shoulder toward Noah, Malik, Grant, and Lena. His thumb moved twice around the edge of his wedding ring. This time he smiled. The gesture was not a request for help. It was a count. He had been marking every witness from the beginning. Ethan asked Lena to turn over the sealed cards. I set my ring on the table, but my fingers stayed against it. Lena opened Noah's card first. Noah had written that I told him Ethan accepted open flirting and that the rooftop photograph had been my idea. Ethan had only asked what I said before, placing Noah's hand around my waist. The terrace flash appeared on the screen. My hand rested against Noah's jacket. Ethan stood in the background, looking toward the photographer's assistant. Noah scored me 2 for honesty and 1 for respect, then stepped away. Lena opened Malik's card. Malik had written that I described our marriage as modern and allowed him to believe Ethan approved attention from other men. The dinner clip played next. My voice explained that Ethan rarely minded anything. I had assumed Malik sent it because Ethan begged for proof. Malik sent it because Ethan asked what rules I had given him. I told the crowd every clip was missing context. Lena asked which context made all the versions true at once. No one answered for me. Grant's card said I told him Ethan would not care if another man danced close. Grant had met me twice. Then Lena opened Adrian's card. I reached for his arm, but he moved it away. Adrian had written that I told him the marriage was finished. Ethan understood the auction, and the event was for my career. Adrian removed the winner's ribbon and laid it across my chair. He said he had agreed to perform attraction at a nightclub, not end a marriage. He returned my ring and walked toward the club owner. Lena opened Ethan's card last. The public side was blank. On the sealed side, he had written with my gold paint marker. His final bid was nothing. His condition was that his name be removed from every category. He would not compete for a seat beside a woman who needed strangers to decide whether he deserved it. Under husband material, he had written unavailable. Under marriage status, withdrawn. The crowd did not laugh. I said the auction had only been a test. Ethan said he understood. I had tested whether he would become possessive, loud, or desperate enough to satisfy my idea of love. He had refused. Then he admitted what I said on stage was true. He had become cold. He had stopped reaching for me and turned every conflict into something he could observe from a safe distance. His coldness helped create the empty space I kept filling with other men. It also allowed him to stand there without fighting me for control of the story. He had asked each witness what I told them and let my stories meet. I looked for Madison. Her chair was empty and the folder was gone. Lena said Madison had read the cards and left through the staff exit. Ethan removed his wedding ring and placed it beside mine. He said a divorce petition had been filed and the property inventory was scheduled for the following week. I moved into a furnished studio above a pharmacy while Ethan remained in the apartment. My accounts stayed mine, but the events built around our shared life disappeared. Madison sent one message asking for distance, and Serena stopped answering my calls. Adrian used the nightclub photographs in his portfolio but removed every image containing me. My company kept my title, while Lena's recording ended my access to private client celebrations. 2 weeks later, I returned to the apartment while Ethan was working. The Sunday diner coasters were gone. The 4 out of 10 napkin remained on his desk beside the gold marker, now capped. I had believed power meant making my husband afraid to lose me. Ethan's power was colder. He let me perform every version of myself until there was no private version left for him to protect. I still believe he should have reached for me before he began watching me. That truth remains. So does the empty chair Adrian won and refused to keep.